Let me welcome you all our today's honorable guests and our participants, listeners to today's webinar. And without further hesitation, I would like to kindly pass the first welcome word to His Excellency Mr. Michal Slivovič, Ambassador of the Slovak Republic in Ankara, please.
Hello. Good morning. Can you hear? Okay. Thank you for the floor and good morning. Dobré ráno, günaydın. Let me make 3 short remarks at the beginning. So first of all, I would like to thank SARIO and DEIK for making today's webinar happen, and warm greetings to all participants on both sides. I do believe that direct links and communication between the business people, even though remotely, like in this case, have their added value, and they are very important in terms of bringing new ideas for the overall development of business and economic cooperation between Slovakia and Türkiye. My second point will be more political. The relations between our countries have been elevated to the level of strategic partnership. Slovak Prime Minister Fico and Turkish President Erdogan signed a joint declaration to this effect in January here in Ankara. And now it's necessary to fill this strategic partnership with concrete content, besides the political dimension, also in the area of economy and trade. Our political leaders in January have stated the need to double trade exchange between Slovakia and Türkiye to 5 billion euros. And here the role of the business people on both sides, I have to say, is indispensable. So I firmly believe that today's webinar will yield concrete ideas and proposals in this direction to better utilize the untapped potential in bilateral economy and trade between Slovakia and Türkiye. And my last point will be more personal. I returned to Türkiye after 24 years, this time as an ambassador, and now I have been in Ankara for 3 months, still rediscovering this wonderful country with wonderful people. And let me assure you that the Slovak Embassy in Ankara is ready to fully support meaningful business activities on both sides. Even though the business itself is primarily conducted by companies, our embassy is prepared to assist on its part, particularly by enabling and facilitating. And I have to say that our doors are open for you. So I'll end here and wish you a successful webinar. Thank you for attention. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Excellency, very much. And I would like to pass the word to Mrs. Harika Güral, Chairperson of DEIK and Türkiye Slovak Business Council. Thank you.
Thank you very much. His Excellency Ambassador Slivovic, Mr. Daniel Ondrush, Deputy Head of Foreign Trade Department of SARIO, distinguished guests, dear members of SARIO, and esteemed representatives of the Slovak business community. It's both a great honor and a true pleasure to welcome you all to today's webinar on business opportunities in Türkiye. On behalf of DEIK Türkiye Slovak Business Council, I'd like to extend my warm appreciation to our valued partner, SARIO, for co-organizing this event with us. This gathering is more than just a meeting. It's a reflection of our shared commitment to strengthening economic diplomacy and unlocking new horizons for cooperation. Earlier this year in January, we hosted the Türkiye-Slovakia Roundtable meetings in Ankara. That event generated strong momentum and opened new channels of dialogue between our business communities, and today we are building upon that foundation with renewed energy and determination. Since its establishment in 1995, the Türkiye-Slovakia Business Council has remained dedicated to advancing bilateral trade, enhancing mutual investments, and fostering solid business diplomacy. Over the past 3 decades, we have worked tirelessly to ensure that our council serves not only as a bridge between 2 nations, but also a platform where concrete results are achieved. By the end of 2024, Turkey's export to Slovakia has reached to $1.26 billion, while imports stood at $1.77 billion, bringing our mutual bilateral trade volume more than $3 billion. Looking ahead, we have set ourselves an ambitious yet an achievable target, surpassing $5 billion in trade volume in the near future. This goal is not simply a number. It symbolizes our shared ambition, our untapped potential, and our determination to elevate bilateral economic relations to new heights. As of December 2024, 53 Slovak capital companies were already active in Türkiye across diverse sectors such as energy, construction, logistics, IT, and healthcare. Their achievements stand as powerful proof of what can be realized when entrepreneurs and investors collaborate. And the success stories are invitations for more companies to follow the same path so that we can build a stronger, more resilient partnerships together. Today, Türkiye-Slovakia Business Council will continue to act as a reliable bridge, a facilitator of business diplomacy, and a catalyst for new partnerships. I'm confident that today's webinar will spark fresh ideas, encourage great investments, and lead to long-lasting collaborations. Thank you very much for your kind attention, and I wish you all a most insightful and productive session. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Gural, for your insight. And also let me now pass the word and close the opening of today's webinar to Mr. Daniel Ondruš, Deputy Head of Foreign Trade Department at the SARIO agency, and then we will proceed to the presentation on the Turkish market and the possibilities it provides. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Adam, Your Excellency, dear Mrs. Gural, ladies and gentlemen, dear participants. It is my pleasure to welcome you on behalf of Slovak Investment and Trade Development Agency to today's webinar dedicated to exploring business opportunities and to acquiring insight into the Turkish market. Slovakia and Türkiye have been developing strong cooperation in the field of trade and investment for many years. Last year, we jointly established Joint Economic and Trade Committee, known also as JETCO, and we believe that its first formal session will take place soon. Today's event is another opportunity to introduce the Turkish market to Slovak companies and to further strengthen our future economic relations. Trade between our countries has a growing potential, especially in the current geopolitical and geoeconomic context. We highly value having DEIK as a strongly and well-established partner in Türkiye, supporting the development of business activities already for a long time. Equally important is the support of our diplomatic representation in Istanbul and Ankara, where a new economic counselor will also take office in November. I firmly believe that today's webinar will highlight which sectors are currently the most suitable for cooperation between Turkish and Slovak businesses and where new opportunities are opening for Slovak companies. I'm convinced that each of you will gain valuable insights and takeaways that will support your future business decisions. I would also like to encourage all participants to reach out to us beyond this webinar. Should you be interested in cooperation, we are ready to provide you with further information and support in developing your business activities in Türkiye. Thank you very much, and thank you for your attention. I wish you an inspiring and fruitful event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Daniel. Now I would like to kindly ask and proceed to the main part of today's webinar. We have here with us Mr. Hakki Karatas, who is Director of Economic Research and Chief Economist of DEIK. Please feel comfortable to share your presentation with our participants. Thank you.
Good morning and welcome to the webinar. I guess you can see my presentation right now.
Yes.
Okay, good. Today I will talk about macroeconomic outlook in Turkish economy and business opportunities in Türkiye. Okay, why you should choose Türkiye? This is the outline of my presentation. First, we have a robust economy. Well, I will talk about this later. Second, we have a large domestic and regional markets, strategic location, favorable demographics, skilled and competitive labor force, continuous reform process, the business environment in Türkiye, the incentives, R&D ecosystem, and sector opportunities. These are the main factors you should take into account while doing business with Türkiye. Let me start with robust economy. What do I mean by robust economy? Türkiye is 12th largest economy in the world. So in 2003, our ranking was 18th. We were 18th largest economy in the world. In 2019, just before the pandemic, we jumped to 13th position. And as of last year, we are 12th largest economy in the world. Sorry. Okay. So the real annual GDP growth within the last roughly 20 years in Turkey is 5.3%. So if you compare with other peer countries like Poland, Romania, Bulgaria, Czechia, and Hungary, and these are the Eastern European countries, and these are mainly rival countries of Turkey. This is why we have chosen these countries in comparison with Turkey. You see Turkey is exceeding all of them with a 5.3% growth rate, annual growth rate with the last roughly 20 years. So in 2002, our GDP was $238 billion US. Now, as of last year, we exceeded $1.3 trillion. And where does this growth come from? Mainly from domestic consumption. 74% of the growth comes from domestic consumption. And investment expenditures and exports, they are also contributing to our growth performance. So this shows the largest economies of the world. China, USA, these are the biggest economies, and India. And Turkey is coming after UK and Italy, the 12th largest economy in the world. So this shows GDP per capita. GDP per capita increased after the pandemic. We exceeded 15,000, and within the last 3 years, we are expecting GDP per capita to reach and maybe exceed 20,000 US. So these are the projections for the next 3 years. We are expecting, as of 2028, to exceed 20,000 threshold levels. So Turkey is becoming a rich country in terms of GDP per capita. So we are currently a middle income country. In 3 years, we are expecting to become a rich country. And employment, of course, during the pandemic, we have seen a slight decrease in employment, but after the pandemic, we quickly recovered, and currently 30.6 million people are employed in the Turkish economy. So I will come to our population, but our population is roughly 28 million. So this is the unemployment rate. After the pandemic again, we decreased the unemployment rate up to 8%. And foreign trade. So Turkish economy is an open economy, of course, and foreign trade plays a significant role in our economy. We are both exporting and importing. Our export is $369 billion US, as this is annual 12 months average, and import is 358. And as you see, we are having a foreign trade deficit. So why we are having foreign trade deficit? Because we are importing mainly energy and raw materials. So these are the biggest items that we are importing. And because of that, we are having usually a trade deficit. So these are the sector breakdown of our exports. Vehicles are the main, automobile and automobile parts, vehicles in general are the main exporting sector in Turkey. And boilers and machines and textile, let's say, ready-made garments these are three main traditional sectors. But in addition to that, we are also adding some more sectors that contributes to our export performance, like, for instance, furniture, chemistry, machines, electrical machinery, and equipment. So we have a diversified portfolio of sectors that are contributing to our export performance. So in total, we have close to 30 sectors that are exporting. And where are we exporting? This shows the geographical distribution of our exports. Of course, the majority goes to European countries, European Union members. Roughly 41% of our exports goes to European member countries. And if you include other European countries, the non-European Union member countries, this is 15.3%. So in total, we are exporting mainly 60% to Europe, both European member countries and non-member countries. And in addition to Europe, Near and Middle East are also growing, and North Africa and North America, and Canada. These are our main export markets. This shows the Turkey and Slovakia trade balance, and Ms. Harika Gural talked about during his welcome speech, she talked about numbers. Currently, we have again trade deficit with Slovakia. We are importing 1.8 billion US dollars, and we are exporting 1.3 billion US dollars. The trade deficit is negligible; it's not too much. And if you compare our export performance with other country groups, within the last 20 years, our export growth has been 5%. This annual export growth. The world average is 3%. The Euro area average is 3.2%. Emerging and developing Asia, this includes also China and India, 4.3%, and Latin America and the Caribbean, 2%, 3%. You see, we exceed all of the world and the other main country groups. And as a result, we increased our share in total world exports. In 2013, our exports, as a share of total exports, was below 1%, 0.8%, and now we exceed 1.07%. If we come to imports, as I said at the beginning, we are importing mainly raw materials and energy. And in recent years, we also started to import consumption goods as well, but mainly energy and raw materials are the main import items of Türkiye. So inflation is high, but we are implementing a strict monetary policy in Türkiye, and we reduced inflation up to 33%, and we expect inflation to come to below 30% this year as of end of this year. And after 1 year, we are expecting to come to below 20%, and in 2 years, we are expecting to reach single-digit levels of inflation. And budget deficit, usually Türkiye is implementing fiscal discipline. But if you look at the last 2 years, in 2023, we had an earthquake in Southeast Asia and Southeast region, and because of that, with the last 2 years, the government expenditure increased up to 5% of GDP. But beginning from this year, we are expecting a budget deficit around 3% and less in the coming next years. So our public debt level is very, very low. If the Maastricht criterion is the criteria of the European Union is 60%, which says that the public debt of as a share of GDP should not exceed 60%. And in Türkiye, this is even below 30%, 25.3%, which is very favorable. And this second reason why you should have business with Turkish companies is that we have a large domestic and regional economy. What do I mean? Income, if you look at the income per capita in 2002, this is, by the way, current price at purchasing power parity, not the nominal figures. In 2002, our GDP per capita was 10,000. Now, as of last year, we had about 40,000 GDP per capita. And stock of automobile increased from 4.6 million in 2002 to 16 million as of last year. And Turkish aviation passengers, it was 33.8 million in 2002. Now it exceeded 230 million. So there's a growing sizable middle class with increasing purchasing power. The total population is 28.7 million, and we have, of course, Istanbul, Ankara, and Izmir. These are the most populous cities, but we have 24 urban centers with populations over 1 million. And we have a young population. Half of the population is under the age 34. But if, of course, you invest in Türkiye, you are not only selling to this 85 million people. You can access to 1 billion consumers. How can that be possible? We have custom union agreement with Europe, so you can sell your goods to Europe without tax. And the population of Europe is 440, it's close to 500, let's say. And we have free trade agreements with 30 countries. And if we add these countries' population, you can reach another 488 million people and another 85 million in Türkiye. So in total, if you produce in Türkiye, you can have access to 1 billion consumers with this custom union agreement and with other free trade agreements. And another reason is a strategic occasion. So Türkiye is a hub for multinational companies to manufacture, to export, and manage. We have proximity to major markets, and within you can reach 1.3 billion people and 10.3 trillion imports and 30.6 trillion GDP in Europe, Middle East and North Africa, and Central Asia at a 4-hour flight distance. So you can, within 4 hours, you can reach to this market, which is a very big market. And connectivity, Turkish Airlines connects to 349 destinations in 130 countries. So as a result of these factors, manufacturing companies, international companies are choosing Turkey as a manufacturing hub and export hub, as well as management, logistics, procurement, and training hub for multinationals. So these are some companies that are managing their global operations from Turkey. And the location and enhanced capabilities, production, attracting multinationals to invest for export. So export is very important for Turkish economy. If you look at our merchandise exports by geography, in 2002, our exports was $36 billion, and European Union was the main export market with 48%, and MENA region comes second with 14%, and North America with 10%. As of last year, European Union is of course the main trading partner, but the shares decreased a little bit from 48% to 43%. And in addition to European Union, the share of MENA region increased from 14% to 20%, and North America is also gaining importance. And the total exports of Turkey as of last year was $262 billion. And if you look at the number of export products over $1 billion, so in 2002, we had only 9 products that exceeded $1 billion threshold level. As of last year, we have 53 products. So we diversified our production capacity in terms of exports. And Turkey's share in global exports of goods is increasing steadily. In 2002, it was around 0.5%. Now we exceeded 1%, 1.08. If you compare export of goods in Turkey and the world, you see the red line is showing the Turkey, where our export growth is higher than world average, with 9.4% of Turkey's growth in the last 20 years, and the world growth, the world export is growing 6.1%. As I said, we have a young population, and half of the population is under age 34.4, so this creates a dynamic labor force and fiscal discipline. If you look at the working age population in comparison with Europe, the working age population is still increasing in Turkey, whereas in Europe it decreases. And total dependency ratio in Turkey is decreasing, whereas in Europe it is still increasing. And in addition to young labor force, we have also a skilled and competitive labor force. So we upgraded our education system to enable a skilled labor pool and address business requirements. If you look at the annual number of graduates, in 2002, university graduates was 287,000. Now we have close to 1 million university graduates as of last year. And similarly, we increased the number of graduates in vocational and technical high school. In 2002, we have only 177 graduates from vocational and technical high school. As of last year, we increased this 335. If we look at the availability of qualified engineers, again, in comparison to other countries like Poland, Czechia, Romania, Hungary, Bulgaria, we are coming the first. If you look at the availability of competent senior managers, we are coming after Czechia and Poland third. And if you look at the cost of living index, we are a very low cost of living index in Turkey in comparison with, again, with some developed countries and developing countries in Eastern Europe. And if you look at the labor force by education level, in 2002, 90% of our education was high school and below. Now, as of last year, the university graduates increased their share with 71%, 3% is high school graduates, and more than close to 30% we have university graduates in our labor force. And another reason why you should have business opportunities with Turkey is that we have a continuous reform progress. In 2001, we established Coordination Council for the Improvement of the Investment Environment. This is a council established by the government. The vice president is chairing this committee, and on the one side of the table, the relevant ministries are sitting, and on the other side of the table, the business communities like DEIK and other prominent business communities are coming together once a year, and they discuss the business environment in Turkey, and they are doing the necessary reforms based on the feedbacks that are given by business communities. So this shows the major reforms that we have taken within the last 20 years, and it continues. The coordination, the Coordination Council for the Improvement of Investment Environment is still coming together once a year, and we are discussing the business environment in Türkiye, and we are showing our demands, we are asking the necessary steps, and the governments, the ministries are taking these steps. Let me give some examples. For instance, in 2003, the corporate income tax rate was 30%. Now we reduced it up to 20%, but after the earthquake in Türkiye, as I said, we had the earthquake 2 years ago, we had to increase it to 25%. Currently, the corporate income tax is 25%. We upgraded our investment incentives. We introduced new laws like new capital market law, new upgraded incentives again, industry property law, protection reform packages, new labor court law, etc. So each year we are amending the laws based on the feedbacks given by the business communities. And what did we achieve through these reforms? In 2002, it was taking 38 days to establish a company in Türkiye. Now, as of 2020, it requires only 7 days. And if you compare it with other countries like Russia, Japan, Spain, for instance, in South Africa, you need 40 days to establish a company. So in Türkiye, it is just 7 days. And if you look at the FDI, Regulatory Restrictiveness Index, this index takes a value between 0 and 1. If it is close to 0, which means that you are more open to FDI. If it is close to 1, which means that you are close to FDI. So Turkey's score is very low, 0.1. We are coming second after South Korea, which means that we are more open to FDI. And ease of doing business ranking, as of 2020, our ranking is 33, so we increased. Your higher ranking means that you have more improvements in your business ranking. In 2020, our ranking is 33. We are exceeding again Poland, Hungary, Romania, and Bulgaria. And within the last 3 years, just before the pandemic, we increased our ranking from 60 in 2018, for instance. Our ranking was 60. So thanks to these reforms, we positioned to 33 position. And another important issue is the business environment in Türkiye. We have protection of international investors by FDI law. We have bilateral investment protection treaties, agreements with 89 countries, and we have treaties, agreements to avoid double taxation with 93 countries. And if you look at the international tax competitiveness, as of last year, we are coming fourth after Hungary, Czechia, Slovakia, and Türkiye, which means that we have a competitive tax system in Türkiye. And incentives are also very diversified and very lucrative. We have different types of incentives, like manufacturing incentives, like tax deduction and exemption. There are employment incentives, like payroll and training support. R&D and innovation incentives, again, tax deduction and exemptions. Incentives for service exporters, incentives for technology development zones, support R&D and again, tax deduction and exemption, and exclusive zone, and other different incentives for exclusive zones. So Turkey is divided into 6 categories in terms of the region, and the scope of support instruments varies depending on the development levels of the regions. The green area shows the least developed regions, and the blue bar shows the developed regions. Region 1 is the most developed region. Region 6 is the less developed regions. And if you are investing in less developed regions, you are getting more generous incentives. And the incentives parameters are like, first, VAT exemptions. We have customs duty exemptions, corporate income tax to be applied, social security premium support for employees and for employees, interest rate support. These are the main parameters that you can have access when you're investing in Türkiye. And R&D, brand R&D ecosystem. The R&D incentives are further supported by a favorable ecosystem, R&D ecosystem. The number of researchers in Türkiye is exceeding Poland, Hungary, and Romania, you see. We have 740 international companies who are managing their R&D centers from Türkiye, and we are increasing our R&D expenditures as well in Türkiye. So these are some companies that have R&D centers in Türkiye. They are managing their global or regional R&D operations from Türkiye. And last, let me talk about some sector opportunities. So automobile sector is very important in Türkiye. It's also one of the significant export sectors. We are 12th largest manufacturer in the world and 4th in Europe. We are producing 1.4 million vehicles, and we are exporting about $30 billion in the sector. Machinery and electronic equipment is another exporting sector. Largest TV and white goods producer in Europe, exporting 75% of our production. Aerospace and defense industry. Defense industry is again very important in our export as well. We are exporting defense manufacturing products as well. Energy. We have 6th largest electricity market in Europe with more than 115 gigawatts. And we are switching to renewable energy projects. 59, almost 60% of our energy comes from renewable energy. And we are also planning to produce nuclear energy as well. Agriculture and food is also important. We are 9th largest agriculture producer in the world and 1st in Europe. You know, agricultural products are not included in custom union. And infrastructure investments are also very important in Türkiye. Within the last 20 years, roughly 20 and 30 years, we invested 215 billion in infrastructure to build dams, airports, railways, highways, etc. And ICT, information and communication technologies, they are also increasing its share and importance in Turkey's exports. So why are international companies are choosing Türkiye? Because of the export performance. So if you look at the FDI inflows between 1973 and 2002, in 30 years, we had only attracted $15 billion. But if you look at the past 2003 and beyond, with the last 22 years, we attracted 273 billion FDI. And where does this come from? Mainly from Europe. Almost close to 70% of FDI came from European countries. And in addition to that, North America, Asia, and Gulf countries, Middle East countries, they are also contributing to our FDI portfolio. In 2002, we had only 5.6 thousand international companies. Now they are close to 90,000, as of last year. And if you look at the sector breakdown, finance, manufacturing, and energy, these 3 sectors are the main sectors that we are getting FDI investments. Manufacturing with almost close to 25%, finance close to 30%, and energy. Thank you for your attention and listening. If you have any questions, I will be happy to answer, and I can go with your questions that you have sent to me. Or if you have any other questions, I can also collect them.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Karatas. On behalf of SARIO, I would like to say that it was very interesting to see, and thank you for providing the broader picture of how to actually understand the market of Türkiye. And especially what I perceived as being a huge motivation for deepening the cooperation is that the economy of Türkiye is really huge. And as you said, the forecasting and the potential for growth is tremendous, which is also going hand in hand with the rising purchase power of the local consumers and the population, which is interesting to hear. And on the side of sectors, I would say the ones you highlighted are also the ones that highly correspond with the sectors of the Slovak economy and our exports and foreign trade, where we definitely have much more potential to develop this kind of cooperation. And yes, as you said, I would like to also encourage our participants today to send some questions through Q&A button on the bottom line. But also, as you said, we have received some questions beforehand. So I will gladly use the time we have for actually sharing few of these questions. I hope you see them on the screen already. And we can slowly proceed to these questions, and if we will receive any via Q&A or chat, then we can also get to these questions too, or answer them after the webinar will be over. Thank you.
Okay, I can start with this question. What is the current presence of Chinese companies in Turkish market, and how does it affect the competitiveness of European firms, particularly in the energy sector and energy projects, and also considering monetary policy and euro TL exchange rate. Okay, let me start with Chinese companies. So the Chinese companies, they are having investments in energy sector in Türkiye. For instance, companies such as SPIC, State Power Investment Corporation, are involved in large-scale power generation like thermal or solar power, hydropower or gas or storage investments in Türkiye. For instance, in Adana, a city in our southern coast, the Chinese company Hunutlu Thermal Power Plant is built with a Chinese involvement. And Chinese companies are also participating in solar PV projects. Some invest via joint ventures with Turkish companies or manufacturing partnerships. Again, solar panel, module market makes invest in plants or local production. They're also building infrastructure such as natural gas storage, hydroelectric, and coal-fired generation, often bringing cheap labor or lower cost supply chains. And there's also increasing cooperation in renewables like solar, wind, and coal and storage between Turkish and Chinese firms, including plans to expand into third country export as well. So, of course, as a European country, you have to compete with Chinese companies. So what can be the main problems or the main risk for European countries, for European companies in that case? Of course, Chinese companies, the first is that they are usually supported by Chinese governments, so they can reduce their costs too much. And this is a risk, even this is a risk for Turkish companies as well in some sectors. And they can also bring their financing they can, when they are giving a bid, they can offer long-term payment periods or flexible in currency. So these are the main risks in doing business with Chinese companies. So currency and inflation, yes, inflation is risk in Türkiye. Inflation is high in Türkiye, but we are reducing it to single-digit levels in 2 years. We are expecting to come to single-digit levels in 2 years. Well, this is a risk, but most of the European countries, they are having investments in Türkiye, so they know how to tackle the inflation problem in Türkiye. So this is not a big, especially inflation is not a big, if you are investing for long-term periods in Türkiye. And Euro-TR exchange rates, the monetary policy is, of course, very strict currently because of the high inflation. But when the inflation comes down, of course, the central bank is reducing interest rate as well. And for instance, last week we had a monetary policy meeting and they reduced interest rates from to 40.5%. It was about 43%. So we expect this inflation to come down until 30% as of end of this year. So it will not be a big burden if you look at the future. Any questions regarding this? My answers with this question with Chinese companies in energy sector. If not, we can continue with other questions.
Yes, I have moved to the other question.
Yeah, let me. Yes, but major energy projects and transformation trends are currently underway in Türkiye. Are there legislative changes planned in the field of waste management? Which energy sources are currently prioritized in Türkiye? Combined cycle gas plants, biomass, or nuclear energy? Let me start with nuclear energy. Yes, we are constructing a nuclear power plant in 2 cities. One is in Akkuyu, against the southern coast, and another in Sinop. We are working with Russian companies for these power plants, Akkuyu and beyond. And we are switching to renewable energy projects like solar, wind, hydro, and biomass. And as of May of 2025, Turkey's installed renewable non-fossil capacity is large and growing. So, like from hydro, solar, wind, biomass, and geothermal power, we have these types of energy sources. And the government has set new targets for 2035. We are aiming to increase our renewable energies, wind, solar especially, because we have high capacity in these sectors, wind and solar panels, to reach 120,000 megawatts or 120 gigawatts with substantial investments, including grid and transmission investments as well. And natural gas, we are also discovering natural gas in Black Sea These are significant source of investments, again, in Sakarya and gas fields. And Turkey continues to sign LNG supply deals with other countries as well to diversify our gas sources. We have combined cycle gas turbine plants remain important. Existing plants have good capacity, and new ones, including expansions, are considered especially as backups or balancing sources in grids with intermittent renewables. And we are increasing our energy efficiency as well. We are switching to electricity. We are electrifying our energy sectors. And the last, waste to energy, biomass and waste management. So this sector is also growing, but the share is still, of course, low compared to wind and solar energies. Especially Istanbul municipality, for instance, they are planning a power plant for biomass. What are Turkey's long-term strategic plans to address in transportation challenges and improve cost and time efficiency? Are there specific initiatives to increase railway capacity and invest in infrastructure developments? Yes. So Turkey has a transport and logistics master plan covering 253 for the next 30 years, roughly 35 years. Turkey has adopted a long-term master plan aiming to modernize and expand its transport and logistics infrastructure by 2053. We are expanding our current railroad network. We are increasing the share of rail in passenger and freight transport. We are expanding road and divided road networks. We are improving port capacity and making transport more efficient and environmentally friendly. This is the general framework of our master plan for transport and logistics. Railways expansions are our main target. By 2053, our aim is to invest roughly 30,000 kilometers of railway. High-speed rail network expansion, close to 10,000 kilometers, and increase in electrified, double-tracked, and signaled lines to boost capacity, speed, and reliability. And there's also modal shift target. There is emphasis on shifting freight from road to rail. So currently we are using mainly highways for freight. Our aim is within the next 30 years to switch from freight road to railroad and increasing passenger transport by train to reduce costs, greenhouse gas emissions, and depends on road. And of course, we are also investing in logistics as well. We are aiming to make Türkiye as a logistic hub for, because we are just at the crossroads of three big continents: Europe, Asia, and Africa and Middle East. So we're at the intersection of these big markets. So we are aiming to increase our logistic capacity as well, with railway capacity, of course. How should a company proceed if a supplier delivers goods of a different quality than agreed and refuses to take responsibility? Are there options to hold the supplier accountable when a large quantity of unusable natural material has already been delivered? Of course, yes, you have many options. First of all, you have legal claims against the supplier. You can withdraw from the contract. You may request for a price reduction, or you may ask for a free repair or replacement of the defective goods, and you may ask for a compensation for your damage. These are the options that you are having currently. If the supplier is denying its obligations, of course, you have the right. First, you may send a formal notice and stating that the goods are defective, of course, based on your agreement. The chosen remedy, what do you want to return or replacement or price reduction, and a specific deadline for resolution. And you may also file a lawsuit in commercial court, of course. So this is a commercial court issue, especially in high value disputes. We are recommending this. And also you have the international measures for international suppliers as well, because you may apply for arbitration center. And all of these remedies should be put in your agreement. If you are putting all of these remedies in your agreement, you may have many options if you are having such a problem. But I guess you will not have what are you doing if you are having a problem with Slovak companies? This is the same in Turkey. you may apply to the court. You may file a complaint in commercial court, and you may get your either price discount, or you may return your goods, or you may ask for replacements, etc. Where and how can I verify a Turkish business partner? Company registers. There are many different sources in Turkey, but I am not sure. As a foreign company, you may have access, because in Turkey we have a e-Turkey website, and all of the business people and all of the institutions and individuals access to the system. But as a foreigner, you may not have access to. If you may have access to e-Turkey website, you may find a company, Turkish business partner, with tax identification number. This is very important, because all of the companies in Turkey, they have a tax identification number, and through these numbers, you may check this company. And in addition to that, I can recommend you may look for companies using some business committees like DEIK or Chamber of Commerce. So you can ask these institutions to find partners, or to check the partners that you have, because all of the companies in Turkey, they should be registered in Chamber of Commerce. If you are working closely with the Istanbul company, you may ask for Istanbul Chamber of Commerce for verifying your partner, Turkish partner.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Karatas.
You're welcome. If you have any additional questions and comments, you are welcome.
Thank you a lot. You have answered all the questions we received in advance, and I do believe there will be some more questions even after we finish this webinar. But for now, I don't see that we have received any additional questions. Thank you, and we officially close the webinar. Goodbye.